Hello, beautiful, curious creatures. I hope you are all having a wonderful day today. So I had a comment on my Transition Tuesday post yesterday asking me, how would you cue this movement to clients or just in general? And I thought that was a really good question because there are a lot of different things going on, a lot of moving parts at the same time, and to be able to clearly communicate that to your clients can definitely be a challenge. It's kind of like trying to cue short spine on the reformer for the first time, where you're a little like, what? all at once. So, or just me, maybe. So we're going to be looking at ways you can break it down and layer it back up. So this is going to be obviously helpful for instructors if you're wanting to have ideas on how to cue and teach this movement. But even if you're just looking for your own practice at home, hopefully these cues will be helpful to keep them in mind as you're going and you're practicing on your own. So before we get started, other things to kind of keep in mind as you're going throughout class, like you would with any class program, if you plan your classes, unlike me, but you want to keep in mind if that's kind of your peak movement or one of your peak movements, what are the things that you need to warm up and prep before you even get there in that point of class. So for this particular movement we're going to be doing today, a lot of core stability work, so being able to support the torso, in a neutral position regardless of what the limbs are doing. So we need to be able to feel stable in moving our torso in different planes through space while our limbs can be separate and moving otherwise. Sorry, getting distracted by comments. So class prep number 1 for this particular movement, you want to be warming up the core in its stable line. So yes, you still want to get in all of your movements, flexion, extension, rotation, etc. But for this particular purpose, you want a held, strong, stable core. Then the second thing you're going to want to make sure that you've already warmed up in class before you even get to this point is inner thighs. So it might not look like there's a lot of inner thigh work going on in this movement, but I promise you there is. And if they're warmed up and ready to go, not only is the core going to feel more stable like we just talked about, but the legs are going to feel more supported in keeping you upright and moving in that lateral plane of motion. Glutes always, but the other thing that you want to really make sure is warmed up is all of the muscles around your scapula. So making sure that the shoulder is warmed up because of course it's load bearing, but we're also asking it to help move and propel us through our plank. So it needs to be stable through that whole range of motion without any collapse. The other thing that's really important in making sure that the shoulder is warmed up properly is to make sure that we're not overloading into the elbow. So this particular movement, it's really easy to kind of lock it out and then all of the force is going right into that joint in the direction we don't want it to be. So the 3 main things, in my opinion, that I would try to make sure I've already touched on in class before even getting to this would be that core stability, inner thigh activation, and then scapula support, keeping in mind that we're trying to work with a straight but not locked out elbow. Okay, so generally speaking, when you're teaching these complex movements, you want to start with a more familiar movement that people are already going to maybe somewhat recognize, and then start to add on the bits that start to challenge both mind and body. So let's start to actually take a look at this in theory, in practice, not in theory, in practice. Hopping off my long box. Okay, so if you have a mat available, you can do this along with me or you can just watch. So we're going to start with side bend. You might call it mermaid, whatever you call it. We are coming into a placement where top foot is crossed in front of the bottom ankle. And we're in a diamond shape with the body. So that means the heel of the hand is in a straight line with the heels of the feet. And then your knee and your hip are slightly front and back of that. So as always, but especially because we want to be focusing on that shoulder, we're gently but actively pressing the floor away to feel that lat connection and that waistline support from underneath the shoulder blade. Glute is active so that we're not sinking and piking back, but we're actively trying to support the pelvis vertically on top of itself. So here, We're going to feel that activation of the inner thighs that we've been talking about as we exhale, pressing evenly into the hands and the feet. To sweep the fingertips overhead, taking an inhale at the top to breathe into the top rib cage. Here's where we feel that inner thigh connection, bringing us right into the waistline. And then really practicing hinging at the hip, the knee, and the ankle joint as we start to practice bringing that stable spine back to how we started, so that your before and after snapshots would look almost perfectly the same. So we exhale, pressing the floor away so we feel that supportive bottom ribcage waistline, little inner thigh squeeze. Inhale, sweeps the fingertips to take the breath into the top ribcage. And then exhaling to hinge and gently place ourselves back down to the mat. We're gonna go one more time, but we're gonna pause at the top to start to add on our next layer. So we've gotten that feeling of shifting the crown of the head beyond the fingertips to stack the shoulder over the wrist. We're feeling the support of the core, the waistline, the shoulder, and the inner thigh. This time, as we hinge back towards the feet, we're going to keep that relatively neutral line of the torso, still hinging at the hip, knees, and ankles, but this time not allowing ourselves to lower the hip down, but instead staying at a hover. So this is where you want to make sure that elbow is not locked. So give it a little bit of a bend so that you can feel that you have a bit of buoyancy and rebound to your movement. And then same thing, we exhale to press and sweep, taking a little inhale breath, and then exhaling to shift, hinging through the joints of the legs to come back to our hover. And again, we'll do 2 more. Exhaling to sweep, taking the inhale breath. And then again, exhale, feel waistline tighten as you return to the hover. Last time like this. To sweep, little inner thigh squeeze, watching that we're not squeezing into the bottom neckline. To hinge, and this time let's place ourselves all the way back down so you can give the arm and the shoulder a little shake. Okay, so now we have the general movement of shifting and feeling what it's like to keep the hip at the hover the whole time. Now we're going to start to get the legs involved. I'm going to choose to hop right into keeping the bottom leg parallel and the top leg externally rotated. However, if you felt like you needed to break this down for clients a little more, you could also keep this top leg parallel. So maybe I'll show what that would look like as well. So we are going to press all the way back into the plank first. And then once again, inhaling to hinge, into the hover towards the heels. So we're going to start with the bottom leg, exhaling to pick up the foot, sliding it beside the inside of our top supporting knee. So here's where that inner thigh for both legs is important. Top leg is pressing the floor away, feeling that activation, and of course this leg is just holding itself up. And then as we slide back, trying to avoid placing the foot down until you're at the depth of your hinge. So you can place it down sooner if you need to for strength and support, but if you can manage, coordinationally, we want all of the parts of the body to land at the same time. So once or twice more with just the bottom leg, exhaling to shift out, and inhaling to return for 2. And inhaling down. And last one. To inhale, take the breath. Now here, again, you have 2 choices. You could then start to do the exact same thing, only moving the bottom leg and start to add the extension. Or if you want to create that to be just an option for people to take or not take, then we would switch the focus to the top leg. So that's what we're going to do next. So if we come back up into that same full side bend, inhaling to shift into the hinge at the hover. This time, practicing picking up the top leg, and we're keeping this external rotation that it's already in. So feeling the hip and the glute at the back as we press to sweep, pulling the toe, feeling just like a clamshell. So hips are stacked, knees rotated open, and then again, we hinge to slide back into the hover. I have to remember where my feet went. So other thing, make sure you remember if your foot needs to go in front or behind. Okay, so again with the top leg, me not falling over. pulling the heel to the sit bone, and then inhaling to hinge and place back down. Let's do 2 more. Exhaling to press, inhaling to hinge, and then last one. Exhaling out, and inhaling back. All right, giving that arm another little shake. Again, it is pretty intense. So now that we have the 2 legs separately, we're getting the feeling for that shift within the hover and the support of the torso and shoulder. Now we're going to start to practice alternating. We're going to continue to keep both knees bent, and then at the end, we'll take the option to start to straighten. So again, glute is active to stack, bottom rib cage and waistline support, feeling the length of the neck, so that heel of the hand is actively pressing the floor away, so that as we're in the hover, we have a little feeling of push and pull between the hands and the feet. So starting with our bottom leg, exhaling to press and pulling the toe to the knee. Inhaling to hinge, slipping the foot in, so that again we're crossed ankle to heel, and then top leg, pulling the toe to the knee, the heel to the sit bone, and then inhaling to hinge, placing the foot back in front. Exhale, bottom leg sweeps, and inhale to hinge, back to the top leg, exhaling up, and inhaling back. Last time like this. To exhale, sweep, and inhale, bring it back. Last time, top leg. To inhale, hinge. Again, giving it a little shake, catching your breath. We're gonna do final layer, which brings it all together into its final form. I haven't broken down the arms. I think I've been doing some kind of crazy arms, so ignore those for now. I would say, don't worry about that with clients unless they're very coordinated, because it's probably just going to confuse them and distract from the more important things. So prioritizing, doesn't really matter what the arm is doing as long as nothing weird is happening for the neckline. Okay, so from here, final version, adding the reach of this bottom leg. So we're going to be feeling the quad working just above the knee. That's where we want to feel the extension of the leg happening out in front. So prepping the arm, prepping the glute, rib cage, waistline, neckline support, exhaling to press, and inhaling into our hinge. Then we exhale to press and sweep, reaching that bottom leg. So again, inner thighs need to be warmed up here, feeling the quad, and then folding back in, remembering to slip the foot in behind so that we can exhale back up with the top leg. Inhaling to hinge, foot goes in front. Exhaling to press and reach both legs. Inhaling to hinge and tuck. Checking back in, that elbow isn't locked. Both sides of the neckline are long. And we're going to do last 2. And inhale in. Exhaling up. And in. Last one. Pressing into the pads of the fingertip if you do start to feel wrist, shoulder, elbow discomfort. Inhaling to hinge, shaking it out, catching breath. I hope at least 1 or 2 of you were doing that at home. Just me panting on my own. Okay, let's see if anybody had any questions. Can I scroll? I saw some things come up. If you do have any questions while I'm taking a quick peek, let me know if that was helpful. And again, there are always multiple ways that you can choose to break down, choose to layer up, and you really want to do it based on what are my clients' strengths, what do they tend to struggle with, so that you're really breaking down the components that you think might be the most challenging, and then just allowing, sent a request. If you have a question, rather than me bringing you on, just type it in the comments, and then if we want to have a full conversation about it, we can, and I can bring you on after. What was I saying? Right. The breakdowns, try to make them specific to what they need. So if they have really strong core support and that feeling of separation from limbs from torso, then maybe you need to spend a little bit less time on that and focus more on the inner thighs, etc. As you can tell, it is quite a lot of load bearing for the whole side body shoulder support. So I did all on the same side, but this is one where I would go back and forth just to give them time to recoup before you add the next layer on to that same side. And then if that's helpful and you're getting going with it, this was intentionally supposed to be a mimic of a fondue exercise that you might do in ballet or modern, the more contemporary version of modern, but from a plank. So if you can, the challenge yesterday, and let's see, I haven't actually put any thought into this, but yesterday's challenge to go along with it, I'm gonna do my other arm, was to see if you can bring this to standing. So before I start to workshop it in front of you, you get to see my thought process behind these things. So a fondue comes from a bent leg, and technically we would have those ankles crossed, so it'd be kind of like a third or a fifth. And then we'd have that press to reach and straighten both legs, and then folding back in. Then it would switch feet to pull the heel up to the sit bone in what in dance we call a retire. Doesn't matter what you want to call it. And you don't have to have any dance background. And then bring it in. Hard to talk and do all these things at once. Yeah, so from standing, this is what it would look like. So can we find a way to do this from standing to then bring it into a plank? And there we go. I think I might have just done it. And back up. Then you can return to standing so that you can start to feel the difference between what is the challenge standing versus what is the challenge in the plank. I can tell you, as you just saw, balance is going to be much more of a challenge from standing, whereas upper body strength and support is going to be more challenging from the plank. So just experimenting with the pathways you can use to get up and down so that the body can start to feel the contrast between doing the exact same movement on two different planes, back to back, back and forth, intertwining with one another. So hopefully that's helpful. Maybe it sparked a few ideas. And even if it's not this movement specifically that you have an interest in, hopefully that just kind of starts to give you some ideas and concepts as to how you can break down those complex movements and start to build them back up. So we started with a really familiar movement right from the Pilates repertoire, that side bend mermaid plank, and then started to just add on our layers on top of that. So keeping it simple by continuing to work with just the leg, just the hover, and then starting to add all the extra flary bits that are fun and pretty and exciting. And yeah, okay. Let me know if you found this was helpful. Please give me any of your feedback, because if you enjoy this kind of breakdown, I'll do it again in the future. All you have to do is ask. And yeah, okay. I hope you have a beautiful day. I am also going to be doing another live probably sometime this weekend. I'm hoping for Saturday to do the Q&A that I said I was gonna do. So a little heads up on that. And I will see you all later. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for coming. Have a fantastic day. And let's see if I can figure out how to close myself out.